A voice silenced. The heartbreaking farewell to Philip Brady. The air feels heavier today, as if Melbourne itself is mourning. On February 26, 2025, Sacred Heart Church in Kew stood as a somber monument to a loss too vast to comprehend. Philip Brady, the broadcaster whose voice warmed countless homes for 67 years, is gone. At 85, after a fleeting, cruel battle with cancer, he slipped away on February 10th, leaving behind a silence that echoes louder than any words he ever spoke. His funeral, a concelebrated mass and celebration of a life so richly lived, drew a packed house, family, friends, fans, and titans of Australian media. Yet, even amidst the crowd, there was an aching emptiness, a void no badge or hat could fill. Philip Brady was more than a voice on 3AW, more than a face from Channel 9's golden era. He was a thread in the fabric of our lives, woven into late nights and Christmas specials, a constant in a world that shifts too fast. His final broadcast of Remember When on February 2nd was a whisper of goodbye, though we didn't know it then. 9 days later, he was gone, and now we're left grasping at memories, trying to hold onto a man who seemed eternal. The church, adorned with mourners and hats and Brady badges as he'd wished, felt less like a celebration and more like a desperate attempt to keep him close. Pete Smith, his friend of 6 decades, stood before us, voice trembling as he delivered a eulogy that cut to the bone. He spoke of empty seats in the front row, reserved in spirit for legends like Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and Boris Karloff. Giants Brady didn't just meet but befriended, kept alive through letters and calls across years and oceans. He knew them all, Pete said, his words heavy with disbelief. Not like us, who said hello as they passed through. Brady's last call to Bob Hope, recounted from his palliative care bed, was a dagger of sorrow. Hope, frail and fading, had told him, "I look forward to 2 things on my birthday. One is a phone call from my friend in Australia, and the other is from the President of the United States." That friend is gone now, and one wonders if Hope, wherever he rests, feels the loss too. The church was alive with faces: Patti Newton's quiet tears, Daryl Somers' bowed head, Derryn Hinch's stern silence. Simon Owens, Brady's recent co-host, looked lost without his partner. Even Oro, Brady's beloved labrador, padded mournfully among us, a furry mourner who understood more than we could say. Jill Mansfield, widow of Bruce, Brady's longtime Nightline companion, sat with a grief doubled by memory. These were the people who knew him best, yet their presence only sharpened the sting, each a reminder of a world Brady no longer inhabits. He was a man of faith, attending Mass daily, a quiet devotion that earned him the Order of Australia Medal in 2023. But faith feels distant now, a cold comfort against the reality that his pew at St. Francis will stay empty. His home, once filled with the clatter of typewriter keys and the hum of vinyl records, is silent. The 3AW studios, where he spun tales and laughter for decades, feel like a mausoleum without his presence. "He'll be with us for a long time to come," Pete Smith said, but the words rang hollow. How can he be with us when the airwaves are mute, when the phone no longer rings with his voice? Brady's Christmas was a final act of courage. Diagnosed and fading, he still dragged himself to Pete and Jackie Smith's table, forcing a smile for 2 servings of sago pudding. Then, in a feat that breaks the heart, he went on air for 6 hours that night, live on 3AW, giving us one last gift. "That goes to the real measure of what Philip was all about," Pete said, and we nodded through tears, knowing we'd never hear him again. The sago pudding story should be sweet, a quirky footnote, but it's unbearable now, a symbol of a man who gave until he had nothing left. The badges and hats were his idea, a touch of Brady whimsy to lighten our grief. Ladies complied, their millinery a colorful shroud over their sorrow. Men pinned badges to lapels, each one a tiny, futile shield against the truth. Stephen Beers, 3AW's managing director, spoke of Brady's indelible mark on Melbourne radio, but his voice cracked, betraying the facade of strength. "We wanted to believe this was a celebration, as the order of service claimed, but it wasn't. It was a reckoning with absence, a collective wail disguised as hymns and eulogies. His career spanned eras, starting at Channel 9 in 1958 with Graham Kennedy, then anchoring 3AW's nights with Bruce Mansfield and beyond. He was the last of a breed, a broadcaster who didn't just perform but connected, who made strangers feel like friends. Now that connection is severed, and we're adrift. The tributes on X call him irreplaceable, a titan, a gentleman. They're right, but they're also too late. We should have told him more, thanked him louder, while he could still hear us. The live stream flickered on screens across the city, a lifeline for those who couldn't squeeze into Sacred Heart. Posts online spoke of tears shed in living rooms, of grown men weeping at the sight of Aro nuzzling a mourner's hand. A scene to rend the hardest heart. One wrote, and it did. Brady would have hated the fuss, deflected it with a quip or a story about Bing Crosby, but he's not here to stop us. That's the cruelest part. He's not here, and we're left to mourn without his guidance. His death follows too closely on the heels of others. Mansfield in 2016, Kennedy long before. The old guard is vanishing, and Brady's exit feels like the final curtain on an era we'll never reclaim. He was humble, generous, a man who'd rather talk about you than himself, yet his absence screams louder than any spotlight ever could. The industry mourns a legend, but we mourn a friend, a voice that lulled us to sleep, a laugh that lifted our darkest days. As the mass ended, the organ swelled, and Oro let out a soft whine. We filed out into the February heat, hats wilting, badges glinting in the sun. The world kept turning, indifferent to our loss, and that indifference stung most of all. Philip Brady deserved better, more time, more broadcasts, more Christmases with sago pudding. He deserved to stay. "Buddy, I'll hold you in my heart," Pete Smith concluded, "and we all will, because it's all we have left. A silence we cannot bear." And so, we stand on the precipice of a quieter world, peering into a future without Philip Brady's gentle cadence. The badges will fade, the hats will be packed away, and 3AW will soldier on with new voices, but none will carry his warmth, his wit, his soul. Melbourne is diminished, a city robbed of its storyteller, left to echo with the ghosts of his laughter. We'll remember when, the late nights, the shared stories, but the pain of his absence will linger, a wound time may soften but never heal. Rest now, Philip, though it breaks us to let you go. Your voice is stilled, and in its place, a silence we cannot bear.